A reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. Mark. Jesus and his disciples left there and began a journey through Galilee, but he did not wish anyone to know about it. He was teaching his disciples and telling them, the Son of Man is to be handed over to men, and they will kill him. 3 days after his death, the Son of Man will rise. But they did not understand the saying, and they were afraid to question him. They came to Capernaum, and once inside the house he began to ask them, "What were you arguing about on the way?" But they remained silent. They had been discussing among themselves on the way who was the greatest. Then Jesus sat down with the 12, and he said to them, "If anyone wishes to be first, he shall be the last and the servant of all." Taking a child, he placed it in their midst, and putting his arms around the child, he said to them, "Whoever receives one child such as this in my name receives me. And whoever receives me receives not me, but the one who sent me." The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. Well, good day to you. Father Francis back, and it's been a little bit of a hiatus last few weeks. Part of that time been really busy, and also last week, this past week, I was in Menlo Park at a new pastor's workshop. And one of the things that kind of captivated my imagination was when one of the presenters at the workshop said, "How do you go from being good to great?" We were talking about the parish that many of us found ourselves in, the new pastors, and I think it's safe to say that most of us would say that we have good parishes. In fact, all of us could say that our parishes are very, very good. But we want to look at not just being good, but truly being great. And how do we do that? Can we do that? Some people might even ask. Well, the answer is yes. You can go from being good to great, but there is something that comes to the forefront that makes most people very anxious, and that is the concept of change. And with change usually comes for most people fear. Fear. Let me ask you a question. When was the last time you remember being truly fearful about something? How did that fear affect you, say, emotionally, even physically? Can you feel that fear and how you felt back in that time when you were truly fearful? And did it make you, did that fear motivate you to react to people in situations in less than a positive way? Well, I know in my own life that's certainly true. When I am fear-based, I can very quickly and easily just be, if you will, paralyzed by that fear. And I feel like kind of like a wounded animal or a lost animal in some regards. The disciples are probably reacting out of fear. Jesus, in this gospel, Mark's gospel, he tells them some pretty scary things, some frightening things. To think about it. If you and I were told by a dear friend that that friend was going to be turned over to these authorities and he was going to be put to death, they were going to be put to death, wouldn't that fill you with a sense of dread, anxiety, and yes, fear? And so this is what is the gospel is about today. But I want to just say that, and again, some of our biggest societal problems in the world today, I think, involve a lot of fear. fear. Issues sort of like abortion, immigration, and euthanasia. A lot of these issues, if you stop and think about it, are really based in fear. The fear of an unwanted pregnancy, the fear of a stranger at your shore, the fear of a sick person who you don't know how to help. And again, the fear that we all probably have. And how do we respond? What is our response, and what is our reasonable response in the face of these really big issues? Well, I want to say that the good news can also be found in today's gospel today. One of the things about Mark's gospel is it is a gospel of physical movement. Now you might say, well, what has that got to do with anything? Well, a lot of the other gospels can be very, very descriptive. They have a certain, style to them. But Mark's gospel is kind of a, if you will, almost kind of an athletic gospel. It's kind of cut to the bone. It's a ripped gospel, if that makes any sense to some of you. It's a lean gospel. And again, it's kind of fits in with the fact that his gospel is always on the move. Jesus is moving. He's constantly going out because he's on a mission to ultimately embrace the cross. And again, that is, without a doubt, a very fearful prospect. And yet that is his mission, and he is moving out. And so what we see in the Gospel of Mark is, instead of allowing fear to keep us paralyzed, to keep us stationary, we go out to meet it and embrace it and even conquer it. And so that's what we see in this gospel today. Now, what's really intriguing is, yes, there is some fear and trepidation when we talk about the future reality of the kingdom of Jesus. It can be a very scary and frightening proposition. Yet it is also, believe it or not, it is an invitation to the disciples of Jesus' time, but also in our time. It's an invitation to go beyond the here and the now, the known and the safe, to go from being good to truly great, from being ordinary to being extraordinary. Let me ask you a question. Did you hear the invitation of Jesus' words in this very troubling gospel today? This is what he says. He says to his disciples, and even to us, if anyone wishes to be first. In other words, he's saying, if somebody really wishes to embrace a new life, you want greatness in your life, here's what you need to do. It's an invitation. So if you wish to be truly great, this is what we do. We embrace, rather, these difficult times, these difficult situations with love and with courage. Isn't it interesting that a lot of people today, they want to make the church change to accommodate them? And that's not what Jesus is inviting us to do. That's kind of the easy road out. Well, we just change the rules, or we just kind of, do this or that, and then, give everybody a free pass. And that's not what it's about. It's about true mercy and true forgiveness. And it means that we embrace these difficult situations, these difficult issues, even unpleasant and unpopular as they may be. Issues like abortion, issues like immigration, issues like euthanasia. And again, applying the gospel values of Jesus Christ in these circumstances. Because when we look at these circumstances from a gospel, in Jesus' perspective, we see that instead of responding in fear, which always leads to death and negligence, the gospel call is one of love, and that is acceptance. Acceptance. And so, like Jesus, we embrace, this child. And in many ways, that child stands for, I think, so many things. Yes, it means embracing maybe that unplanned for child in the womb. Yes, that can be a very frightening prospect for a young woman or a young family. Maybe they're not in a marriage relationship. Maybe they are married and they're thinking, how can we feed another person? The gospel calls us to embrace the naked, the hungry, and the stranger. As one wonderful priest pointed out, who better exemplifies a hungry, naked stranger than the baby in the womb? We are called to embrace that stranger that shows up on our shores. Yes, we are called to extend to them, the gift of hospitality and acceptance. Again, we think of that tragic photograph of the little boy on the shore there, I guess it was in Turkey, drowned. Again, that sadness that we must all feel, but recognizing that maybe we have a call to try with even our means, even our own personal limited means, to try to embrace the immigrant that comes to us. Again, those who seek to, become, citizens of this wonderful, wonderful, great country. Again, we are a land of immigrants, and those who wish to come and become Americans in the American way of life. Again, we welcome them. Also, again, we embrace those who are sick and infirmed. We don't. Sometimes it's a very scary prospect when we have a friend that's sick, and we wonder, well, what do I say? What do I do? How do I even bring a little bit of comfort? I was told that the one thing that a person who has a terminal illness is truly afraid of, is that they're going to be forgotten. And so we don't want to forget those. We want to be with them, even if it's uncomfortable for us. Again, our presence, believe it or not, just our simple presence means so much. So what do we do when we think about fear? I was reading something just the other day about people who were over 65, and they asked them, what is their regrets? What is the regrets that they have in life? And here's what they said. They regretted that they spent most of their lives worrying, or read here, fearful, anxious. And so I thought about that and I said, that's what it is in our society today. A lot of the things that we have negatively embraced really is a result of fear. And what we need to do is be truly courageous with real hope. And they gave 3 examples of how you deal with this anxiety, the worry, and the fear. And one of them was, don't look at the big picture. We can get so overwhelmed if we look at all of this is such a, issue with such magnitude. How can I, a small person, even begin to cope and bring some kind of a solution? Don't know. But if you look at it small term, you can probably see yourself doing little bit of things that are helpful in a small sphere, which goes a lot. If we all did that, it would help to alleviate maybe the suffering of others. Another one is just simply prepare. If you sense that there's a problem, the worst thing we can do is bury our head in the sand and just ignore it. I've always found the best thing for me, the most therapeutic thing for me, is when I have a fearful thing in my life, the best thing is to embrace it and to prepare for it. Okay, I'm going to hope for the best, but I'm going to prepare for the worst. And I'll tell you that 9 times out of 10, and it doesn't mean that it all gets better and rosy and everything's going to be fine. No, sometimes there is disquieting news from the doctor. Maybe there is disquieting news from your boss. Maybe, there are family issues that are hard to listen to, but you have to do that. So you prepare for the worst, but you hope for the best. And in between, you do find a modicum of peace and serenity in that. And then finally, just learn acceptance. Learn to accept maybe the situation as it is, with the hope of changing it to make it better. Again, we follow the example of Jesus today. And what do? Do we run away in fear? No, we reach out with confidence and we embrace those things in our own life and in our society that cause us fear. We embrace the possible fear of an unwanted pregnancy with love. We embrace that that stranger on our shores, and we embrace that sick and infirm person with love. And in doing this, if we can follow the example of Jesus and embrace all these issues that bring us fear, I think that will help us truly realize how we can go from being just good to being truly great. May God bless you today and every day. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen.